Torah portion that we read this week, Parshat Vayetze, we see Jacob, Yaakov, fleeing from the wrath of his brother after having created this horrible subterfuge with his mother to trick his father into giving him the blessing he had reserved for his brother Esau. And Jacob flees from his family to go find refuge with his uncle in Haran in northern Mesopotamia. And so he stops for the night when it gets dark, and he is so exposed and so alone that he has to actually use a rock for a pillow. And I was thinking about what it must be like, what it must feel like to feel that exposed, that vulnerable, that alone, as Jacob must have felt on that dark night. And I'm reminded of that because there was a member of my congregation when I worked in New Jersey, a man named Bill, who was friendly and warm and engaging, just a phenomenal man. Always seemed to be happy, always seemed to have a lightness of spirit about him. And one day I came to the office and my assistant said, "Bill Waldorf is coming in to see you today." He said, "It's urgent." And I said, "Oh, okay." So Bill came in and he says, "I have something to give you, but it comes with a story." He said, "When I was in Vietnam, a buddy of mine and I were separated from our platoon and we were overrun. And he said, you know how they say there are no atheists in foxholes? I can tell you there are no atheists lying on the floor of the jungle either. Because we had to lay there on the floor of the jungle, face down, not moving a muscle, not twitching or causing any commotion, because one move would have alerted the VC to our presence and we would have been done for. And so as I lay there helpless, I prayed. And I made a bargain with God. And I said, if I get through this night, and I survive this war, and I live to see the birth of my grandchildren, I will do something to honor you." And Bill and his mate survived, and they eventually were able to be reunited with their platoon. And he finished his service in Vietnam and came home, had a family, built a career. And he told me that morning that the night before his daughter had given birth to their first grandchild. And he handed me a check, which I can tell you for Bill was an extraordinary sum. And he said, "I've come to pay my debt." Jacob, sitting there on the floor of the wilderness as Bill had lay on the floor of the jungle, also has a vision of God. He sees a ladder, and on that ladder are angels going up and down on the ladder, and God called to him from the top of the ladder and said, "I will be with you on this journey, and I will protect you, and I will not leave you until I have fulfilled all my promises to you." Jacob also makes a bargain with God. And in that bargain, Jacob says, if I survive this night, and if I am able to go forward and live my life and have it fulfilled, all the blessings and promises that life can hold, then I too will be loyal to God. Jacob remarks upon waking from that vision that there was an extraordinary awareness that befell him. He said, "Yesh Adonai b'makom hazeh v'anochi lo yadati." God was in this place, but I didn't know. And so often, when we consider the course of our own lives, we imagine that so many places are devoid of God's presence. Jacob found himself lying in the middle of nowhere, in some place in the middle of the wilderness, somewhere between where his family dwelt in the land of Israel and the northern part of Mesopotamia. We don't know that place till today. It is called Beit El. It is called the house of God. And some say that is where the city of Beit El is today, but we really don't know its place. It's anonymous. And yet for Jacob, it was a house of God. It was an entranceway to holiness. It was the most profound holy place he knew, even though it seemed like nowhere. For Bill, that patch of jungle, which to this day he's not sure he could find on a map, also became an intense place of holiness. But what if we didn't need to go to war to find those places? Chris Hedges, in his book, War is a Force That Gives Us Meaning, writes that the enduring attraction of war is this: even with its destruction and carnage, it can give us what we longed for in life. It can give us purpose, meaning, a reason for living. Only when we are in the midst of conflict does the shallowness and vapidness of much of our lives become apparent. Trivia dominates our conversations and increasingly our airwaves, and war is an enticing elixir. It gives us resolve, a cause. It allows us to be noble. Lying there on the floor of the jungle, Bill realized all that was important and essential in his life and vowed to build his life on that foundation of holiness. Jacob, too, after having such a complicated and confusing childhood, has his first foray into real adulthood that night lying on the floor of the wilderness, and uses the rock he used as the pillow, not simply as an altar to give thanks to God, but also as the foundation stone for a life of commitment and holiness. We don't need war to know what to fight for. We just need the opportunity to reflect on the fact that anywhere can be that holy place that God's presence can be known. And if we can realize that the homes in which we dwell, the places that we visit day to day, all of those mundane places and moments that we each spend our lives exploring is actually a house of God for us to dwell in. As we inhabit that house and find God's presence in the most unexpected of spaces, we can remember that if we use those foundation stones that we discover in the moments of our greatest vulnerability, if we can find the way to build our lives on those foundations of those ultimate values that some veterans found in war, but that we can find in peace, then perhaps we can build a world that is built on peace, that is built on love and justice and freedom, that is built on all of those things that Bill and Jacob discovered in the moments of their greatest vulnerability, and that we can use to ensure that no one ever spends a night as vulnerable as they ever again. Shabbat Shalom.